What's up, guys? Welcome to Nutmegged, the podcast where a Yank and a Brit talk about the beautiful game from across the pond. I'm Andrew, representing the Stars and Stripes, and as always, we have Faisal living up his best life in the UK. Faisal, what is good?
I'm good, excited to get stuck into this to digest the world of football with you, man.
Good. Well, I'm very excited to do just the same. And to kick off our episode, there's been a lot of hot stuff happening in the world of football. And of course, to lead that off, we should probably talk about the Champions League, which consequently, the round just finished up. So we now know who will be in the final. Do you want to bring us to that topic, good sir?
Yeah, of course. So the four teams that were battling out in the semi-finals was AC Milan and Inter Milan. And there was also Real Madrid versus Man City. Two huge fixtures for both clubs. Man City chasing that elusive Champions League, and I think that would be a game. Well, it's going to be a game changer for Guardiola, and that would be great for them. Obviously, Real Madrid being serial winners of the Champions League, it's just second nature to them, and for them, it's like a cup. It's another cup for them, which is for them. Yeah, it should be a great performance, and hopefully they would aim for that. Obviously, a standard. And then obviously you've also got AC Milan, Inter Milan, fierce rivals, the Milan derby. Italian football's finest clubs, maybe of yesteryear, people would argue. But yeah, four clubs really battling out for that and over across two legs. I'll just jump in on the Inter Milan AC Milan game first, which many would argue wasn't the tire on expected to be. Wasn't amazing, and people weren't massively happy with it. So obviously we had Inter Milan going through the first leg 2-0, and you think AC Milan are going to come back and going to really kind of steal this and really bring it in to the second in the second leg. But unfortunately, that wasn't to be. And Martinez scored, and it's actually ended the game 1-0, and that has sent them through to their final, which is now Inter Milan are now in the final, which is not what we expected when the previous episode. I think, Andrew, we said Napoli, right? That's what we originally thought. So, the second leg wasn't exactly the most riveting watch, and was not the greatest performance from AC Milan. I think they really were almost coward to Inter Milan's performances, really. And there's obviously a lot that more they probably should have done. But, you could argue that the likes of Darmian and also, Lukaku are now in the final of a Champions League, which is crazy. But what was on show tonight was even more special. Andrew, you can take us through the Real Madrid game.
Yes, but I actually have a quick question for you on the Italy matchup. So I've been looking at the rosters for both of these teams, and it seems like one is like a bit more up and coming and has more potential and are building to something. And I believe that's more AC Milan because they have some younger players, they have some more talent in place, and their wage bill isn't even close to what Inter Milan is spending. So there's this argument out there in the world of football saying that it is right now, this has to be the Champions League for Inter Milan because after the season is over, they're going to have to sell one of their big players because they're just hemorrhaging too much money. So if that is the case, who do you think they will end up selling? Because now they're still aligned and maybe will end up winning. If that, again, is the case, who do you think they have to sell?
Well, they've got quite a lot of aging strikers in there. Yeah, you've got obviously you've got what's his face? Martinez is in there. You also got a few different players in there as well. I think there's what's the Man City striker? Edin Dzeko. That's the guy I'm looking for. Great player, great scored. Basically carried them during the first leg. I think these sorts of players. So there isn't actually, I would argue, like fresh pickings of like in that space. Like perhaps Barella of Inter Milan is probably up there. If you watch the Euros, you know how excellent he was for Italy during that space of time as well. So I think there's definitely, I think Barella's probably on his way out, and that happens as well. I would argue that perhaps you've got Lukaku, who is in between the two, whether they're taking back at Chelsea. which I'm sure we'll probably break down at some point in terms of Pochettino and how that's going to pan out for an exciting season ahead. But I would say probably Barella is probably your player that's probably unlikely to stay, and whether Lukaku stays or not. But other than that, I think that the team's fairly aging in itself. They probably need players and these strikers to kind of bring into play. But AC Milan have just got, as you spoke originally said already, it's just a bit of a younger squad. You've got your Rafael Leao, which I mean needs no introduction, right? So my shot would be for Inter Milan. I think Barella's going to go potentially next season, and there's probably a few other players sprinkled in there as well. But my shot would be Barella.
Yeah, no, that's a good call, and he's one of the players potentially on the chopping block that people are predicting as well. I do agree with what people are saying out there that this is the make or break. So lucky for Inter that they've made it through, because if they get knocked out or if they didn't make it past AC Milan, that it's kind of the end. They don't win anything. They put in all this time, this effort, this money into building this roster, and then don't end up coming out with anything. So I would say that's a pretty big disappointment. So even though these games weren't sexy and exciting, I think that Inter Milan will at least be happy. And of course, if you make it through to the next round into the final of the Champions League, you're going to be happy no matter what. Now, I will take us over to the ugly team out of Manchester City, beating Real Madrid. Unfortunately, I did predict that Real Madrid would end up going through and ultimately winning the Champions League this year, because you had mentioned it. They're just serial winners. They just know how to win this competition, which is crazy. And I don't have the stat with me, but I think I heard somewhere that they've won the Champions League 14 times total. That's just wild, because that's like by and far the best record. Plus, out of the past 10 years, they've won it 6 or 7 times, like something ridiculous. Like, come on, in the next, like out of the 10 years, they win it that many times. That's just pretty gross. But it all doesn't matter because they got knocked out by Manchester City. As we all know, I am not a Manchester City fan in the slightest, but in our first leg, it was more of an exciting match, a 1-1 draw. So there was still a lot to play for. And if you've not actually watched the highlights of that game, quite an exciting one, especially to see the teams dueling back and forth, because Carlo Ancelotti's team, it's a bit more vibesy because he's certainly a vibes guy. Real Madrid can certainly maintain possession, but they look more dangerous when they go out on the break. And then that can even be if they build out from the back, there's just like a switch that will go on, and then they can just break out the attack. And they have the stars to do that, of course. And Vinicius is key to that. Now, the second leg was quite different. That just concluded. Manchester City slapping Real Madrid 4-0. So City easily skirting through into the final of the Champions League. So now we have Inter versus Manchester City in the final. What is your prediction, Faisal, now that we know our two teams?
I mean, I feel, and makes me sad, but very confident there's probably one winner in this game. And it's definitely going to be Man City. I think if you see that performance, you would arguably say there probably is no better team than Real Madrid in the Champions League. So if you beat Real Madrid, you're probably likely to go all the way. Inter Milan are not going to pose the same level of threat as Real Madrid. Like, let's be completely honest, they're not. They've got good players, but they aren't. I mean, it's going to be a good match for the neutral, I think, but it should be a City walkthrough, which does bring up a couple of things. Is the treble on? Because City are due to play Chelsea this Sunday, and they beat Chelsea, and that's them win the league. So, which no one really predicted, if I'm honest. You have to ask performances, and then they have obviously the old foes, Manchester United, in the FA Cup final on June the 3rd. So that is again two opportunities as well as the Champions League final. I would argue and say it's the no European, the Champions League jokes are probably going to be over for Man City. They're probably going to win it. Their time has come. But yeah, I mean, what would you think about like Guardiola potentially if he wins this and he goes all the way, gets the treble? Is his time finally done? Do you think? Is he going to sort of be like, you know what, I've done everything here, I'm going to move on, or do you see him staying on?
I do follow your prediction. I think Manchester City will win. They're the hottest team in the world right now. How do you stop them? No one really seems to know, and not even Real Madrid in the Champions League, which I would have bet would have been the most difficult matchup. And unfortunately, the second leg wasn't even that exciting to watch, which I thought it would have been. But to answer your question, I think it will be in Pep's court to determine if he ends up wanting to stay. Maybe he retires from football for a little bit and just takes a break, spends time with family, or if he just wants to keep the grind going and try to fill up his trophy case even more. I'm not quite sure where I would see him going if he decided to leave Manchester and then go to another team. It'd be cool to see him back at Barcelona, and they could certainly use his assistance to maybe restructure the game plan that they have because they've been kind of a mess as of late. I would probably only want him to go to Barcelona. If he doesn't do that, I think I would like to see him retire for a little bit, just to take a break from football. And some managers have done that in the past. And Pochettino, a popular one that has been taking a break from football for the past year. So I think it would be cool for him to do that and then jump back into another team after he's maybe taken a break because he deserves it. He's like the best coach out there, and it's cool to watch him, to be able to see how he manages teams. I love that. I've learned a lot from just watching him from my own coaching career myself. So I think that's pretty cool. What do you think will happen? What do you think his game plan will be?
I mean, it's an interesting one because if you look at the Man City versus I think was it a Chelsea game? And I think he didn't play Fernandinho, or he made a couple of tweaks, and he does that sometimes. And these sorts of games tend to, or perhaps overthink these sorts of things. I think there's no fear of him overthinking this one. He's going to go in there. He's going to stick hard in the front. He's going to know exactly who to play, when to play. There's going to be no mind games, no, like, it's going to be pure strategy, and it's going to be consistent play. I see, and I agree. I think he's definitely going to be. I think he'll get to a point where he'll be like, "Well, I've won pretty much everything I can win here. I don't know what more I can do." And I think as a Man United fan, so there's two things. As a Man United fan, I'd love to see the back of him because for me, the dominance of Man City is purely due to Guardiola's blueprint, how they play football, how it week in, week out, their just sheer, like, their possession, their attack, the defense, excellent. But they all play, and I was watching this game as I was watching the game against Real Madrid. Every single player is playing for Pep Guardiola, and when you remove Pep Guardiola, I just think you'll probably see City tail off a little bit and maybe move into just like a top four, a comfortable top four, but not like a clear runaway team as they are at the moment. So, yeah. And then as a Man United fan, obviously that works. But as a football fan, I would say it's great to see him in the Premier League. He has revolutionized the game in many, many ways, which I'm sure you can speak to. So I think there's definitely, it's a bit of a heart and head situation. But I see him staying on, in answer to your question, and seeing him perhaps he give one more season, and perhaps then he probably feels like, well, I'm not going to win it again, or maybe a bit of pressure drop potentially as well. So, and also you'd argue Man United becoming the fold, then you're getting your Liverpool refresh. You're going to have a Chelsea with the Pochettino and players now. The money is actually going to be properly put into the club now. So, it's going to be a tough season next season.
I have a love-hate relationship with Pep Guardiola. My first real interaction with him was when he was coaching at Bayern Munich, and Bayern Munich was competing against the MLS All-Stars in like 2011 or something. And I was watching the game, and afterward, whoever was coaching, it might have been Bruce Arena coaching the MLS All-Stars, maybe it was Bob Bradley. They went to shake his hand, and Pep ignored him, like brushed him off, because the MLS All-Stars beat his Bayern Munich team. And I don't know if he was mad about that. I mean, it was some intense challenges that went through. Like, it wasn't just like a fun, friendly, but like it was a real match. So I don't know if he was mad at that, but I was super disappointed at seeing that. So that ever since then, I've hated him because of that. On the flip side, his managerial style is awesome, and the way that he implements what his strategies are and how he interacts with players is phenomenal, especially now that I'm more on the coaching side of my soccer career. It's cool to see that and to learn from him. So I love his style, but I will never forget and forgive him for not shaking the coach's hand at that MLS All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, it's, for me, there's three things about Pep Guardiola. Number one is mentality. It's such a monster mentality in terms of you can see when he wins 1-0, 2-0, whatever it is, there's always something better. He's always like, we could have won this or we could have done better. I'm assuming there's some of the players, you see it on the sidelines, watching the match of the day, for example, and he's talking to the players, and that player's just scored 2 goals, and he's talking to him and he's pointing out on there, this is what you could do. That is just, it's built differently, right? Let's think about that. But also, I think for me, it's passion for the game. Like on the touchlines, there's not many managers who are living and kicking. I mean, Diego Simeone is one of them, for example, who's just lives and breathes the team and who's actually kicking every single ball with the players. And his passion and his desire and his actual strategic. And it brings you back to I mean, I'm gushing here at Man City, so I'm embarrassing myself a bit here. But if if you think about it, if you watch the All or Nothing Manchester series again, it just shows again the mentality there. Really, really interesting. So yeah.
It is
Love
neat
how
too to see the coaching tree that comes from him as well, like Mikel Arteta not doing well at Arsenal, Vincent Kompany also
Oh
doing some
wow,
big
yeah, I
things.
forgot. Yeah,
Yeah, so there are a lot, and we'll see more too that come out of either his coaching staff or players that he has managed before, starting to rise up, manage clubs, and be successful with the mentality that he's instructed on them.
I forgot about company. I mean, that's crazy. We haven't even brought that down. I mean, the fact that we've got Burnley and and Sheffield United in the moment into that space. So yeah, gonna be interesting season next season.
Yeah, love to see it. But my final word on Pep is if I would give him instruction as his agent or manager, I would say retire at the end of the season because you will then forever be a Manchester City legend if you win the treble. That is, if he does that, that is what I would say. Do that. That would be great. And then you'll be a Manchester City legend and then finish your career off at Barcelona. Because if he goes and says, hey, Barcelona, I'm interested, of course, they're going to be like, absolutely. And then finish your career there, hopefully win some big things, retire, you're a legend of the game.
But is he? I mean, this is just bringing it back to just jumping on that point. He's not the oldest manager, right?
No,
They're
he's
like,
still young.
I just feel like there's surely he's got clubs in him, and I don't think he's genuinely retiring anytime soon. I hope so, just from a Man United perspective, but I genuinely cannot see it. I don't see him going. I mean, he's just trying to see what we're thinking here, but I just see him always. Maybe it's like club, like World Cup football. Maybe it's like like country Spain. I think there's definitely gaps in there where he'll be able to kind of steer teams that space. I just don't think Man City's like, cool, that's part of my career done. I think there's definitely scope for him to kind of go elsewhere. But yeah, Barcelona would be great to see him do that.
I think also this is coming from a Cleveland sports fan, so I'm a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I have a weird relationship with how players and managers and anyone that's a part of the team, how they stay with the team and then their legacy with that team. So you don't see anymore like players that play on one club and they retire at that club very often. And I am more of a fan of seeing that. And I mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers because LeBron James could have stayed in Cleveland his whole career, won some stuff, and then retired as a legend of Cleveland. But now his reputation is tarnished a little bit because he ended
Right.
up going
Yeah.
to a couple different teams. I think with Pep, he would have that same vibe if he stopped and did not renew his contract after this year. If he wins the treble, you're a legend of Manchester City, done, awesome, that part of your career, close the door. Then go to Barcelona, reopen that because I just think he was so cool.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, some unfinished business. It was so cool seeing him there at Barcelona, the way that he helped to recreate what Barcelona could be. I'd love to help get Barcelona back to that point. I'd love to see him help that because I really do like seeing Barcelona when they're scary and a formidable force, which they really have not been recently. But then you're right, international football could be cool.
Yeah.
However, I don't know if Pep would be the best international manager. And the reason is international football is so different from club because you're a club manager, you're with them every day. You're with the training, you can instill your mindset, tell them how the strategy is supposed to work. When you're an international manager, you just have them for little chunks of time. So I don't know if his strategy, which is so intense and I think requires a lot of time with the players, I don't know if he'd be able to implement that as effectively as an international manager. I'd love to see it though.
There's a lot. I think I agree with you. I think it's almost like a case of he'll just get bored.
Yeah.
He loves football, breathes the football. Like he would almost feel like I'm waiting for the next world. I'm waiting for the next cup competition. And I think that you're right. It just doesn't suit him maybe. But La Liga as well, champions. Barcelona La Liga champions. So maybe they
It's
are on
true.
their way. Maybe they're on the ascendancy, maybe, and Xavi's starting them playing them really well. So yeah, we'll see. Already, we're talking about next season already, but yeah, exciting stuff.
I do like Xavi a lot as a manager. It's pretty cool to see how he's kind of put his own stamp on Barcelona. However, is Xavi part of Guardiola's tree? Because did Guardiola manage him at Barcelona?
Yeah,
Nice. Just
Iniesta as well. Yeah.
even more Pep influence everywhere we look.
He is so ingrained in the, I would say, in the modern football. I feel like I'm close to writing an essay. Let's be reasonable now, right? Just on how has Pep Guardiola shaped modern football, and I think that is, yeah, that could, you could talk about so much individually. You could talk about man management, you talk about strategy, you could talk about possession football, you could talk about how he deals with the press, how he has dealt with players individually, his man management. There's just a lot that can be kind of developed from that. And you'd argue maybe it's not at Sir Alex Ferguson level, so it's come in different time and different eras, but give it, a bit of time, 10, 15 years, people will be looking back at Guardiola as that sort of manager, and he was that guy. And I think that's the important thing to realize as well.
If it's Sir Alex Ferguson versus Pep Guardiola, who you think takes the cake?
I've been asked this before, and it's tough because they're two completely, in my opinion, very different times, right? And different managers in their own right. I don't think, for me, actually, do you know what? No, I'm a nail McCullers to the mass and say Sir Alex Ferguson, because what he has done, Sir Alex Ferguson did with the likes of Wes Brown, the likes of John O'Shea, Alan Smith, like players which perhaps are, you would argue, maybe like mid-table players, and has won back to back, like Champions League. There was like Premier League, and I think personally, Pep Guardiola is great, but I think you genuinely give him like a good solid, like he's never been put into a bad team, put it this way, right? You wouldn't, I mean, he'd still win if you put him in with like Grimsby Town. No offense to Grimsby, I'm just saying, right? He would still win, but I just feel like with Sir Alex Ferguson, there was just consistency. There was just players. There was just, the level was of players. He just got them playing incredible football. So yeah, I'd probably say Sir Alex Ferguson. But don't get me wrong, they're very close.
I would say the same. I think what Sir Alex Ferguson did at Manchester United at the time when the club didn't have the best direction was awesome. And to be able to stay there and be so consistent throughout his whole managerial career at Manchester United is awesome. Pep, I just don't know, because he's not been at one place long enough to kind of build that structure and carry it out over an extended period of time. Not to mention, Manchester City just gets tons of money pumped into the club because they're owned by an oil state. So it's just not going to be ever comparable. I think Pep's managerial style maybe is what is the most comparable. So if you're just taking manager versus manager, two different types of styles. But I think like if they go head to head, just managerial style, if you put them into two clubs that would compete with one another, I think it'd be super interesting and really close. But the way that they manage the situation, I think Ferguson for me would be on top.
Interesting.
Uh,
It's tough battle.
it'd be fun to see. Maybe in some alternate universe we'll end up seeing something. Now, since we've been talking a lot about some of the Premier League side of the Champions League, let's get into a little bit of predictions from the Premier League table standpoint. So
Yeah.
how are you feeling about the Premier League as we're just about to wrap up the season?
Yeah, so obviously a few games now. We obviously, it all ends on May the 28th. That is when the final day of the Premier League is. So it is shaping up to be a very interesting top four battle. I'm just going to pull out a couple of things. Obviously, you've got there's two clear things here, right? So you've got obviously Arsenal and Man City. Man City, if they win on Sunday, it's pretty simple. They win. So I think they win the league. So that's done and dusted. Then you'd argue that perhaps the space here really is the third, the fourth, and maybe the fifth in terms of that battle. And that battle is between Newcastle, of course, Manchester United, and shockingly, maybe not so shockingly, Liverpool as well.
Been
Liverpool
kicking
are in
butt
there.
lately.
They are. They really are at the moment, and it's been an interesting ascendancy for them as well. So, my prediction, it's a tough one because, and I think, and in my prediction, so Man United have got like there's the Man United have got Bournemouth, they've got Chelsea, and they've got Bournemouth, Chelsea, and Fulham. Right. Maybe I'm being pessimistic here. I see Bournemouth. I see it's a draw. Right. Chelsea game, I see that's a loss. And you just bear with me here. I think that, that's potentially here. Then I see a Fulham, I see a win, right? So that's 4 points. And that, if does not put us into the fourth place, because that requires if Liverpool win all their games, for example, if Newcastle win all their games, then that puts us in a difficult position. So we need really 6 points from this. My prediction would be, however, I would say that perhaps maybe Newcastle get the third place. I would say perhaps United scrape into that fourth place, and then Liverpool come in as well. Because if you look at Newcastle's fixtures, they've got Brighton at home, Leicester at home, and then Chelsea. You'd argue that that's 6 points out of 9. What are you thinking?
Here's some scary parts as well. Liverpool's upcoming matches: Aston Villa, Southampton, and Leicester City. So 3 games that are very much so winnable for Liverpool.
Well, the Leicester City, they've already played Leicester City. There's only 2 games left for Liverpool. So they beat Leicester City the other day, 3-0.
Oh, you're right. I think I'm looking at some type of cup match.
Yeah. So there's this.
Oh no, that's even worse.
They literally have Aston Villa and Southampton left, mate.
Oh no, that makes me feel even worse.
So if they get 6 points from that, right, let's think about this. I mean, Aston Villa, you'd argue, are a good run of form at the moment. So maybe it's unlikely. The Southampton game is a dead clean. Like, they are beating Southampton clearly, right? Man United got Bournemouth, Chelsea, and Fulham. There's points dropping.
Much scarier. Yeah, that's much of a scarier lineup.
There's points dropping in there, 100%, right? And then you look at Newcastle. We've got Brighton, which will be a very interesting game. Leicester, and then Chelsea. So Chelsea are deciding a lot of people's fate here. Let's have a look at this, right? It's going to be interesting. What do you think?
The only thing that makes me feel happy is that we have a game in hand, and I say Manchester United because we're both Manchester United fans. If this is your first episode, you'll learn that. But for me, I don't know. Like, I think Manchester United is the one looking the scariest based on the matchups that we have left. So right now, the table for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th that we're looking at are within 1 point of each other. So we have Man City at top with 85, Arsenal with 81. They're both untouchable. They're just going to duke it out for themselves. I do think Manchester City comes out on top. That's done. Arsenal 2, done. And then the gap between that, so it's 81 and then goes down to 66 with Newcastle and Man United both on 66. Then it goes to Liverpool with 65. So they're just 1 point away. Granted, they have one less game to play because Newcastle and Man United still have the game in hand on Liverpool.
Of course, yeah.
But oh man, I don't know. I don't think that Newcastle will end up doing as well as you maybe think. So I think they'll end up bumping down to 5th. And I think Liverpool's going to jump and they're going to win their last 2 games and go 3rd. And then United keep in the 4th spot.
All Man United and Newcastle require from the next 3 games is 6 points. That's all they require, right? I say that, but
I don't think Newcastle's going to get it. I don't know why. I have this feeling, even though they're on a 3-game winning streak, I just have a feeling that they're not going to be as good as they've been the past 3 matches and really for the whole season. So I think that they're going to drop 2 of those games. They're going to win 1. So they're
the Brighton, Leicester, 5th. And Chelsea. You think?
I think Chelsea is definitely a loss, which is scary because Manchester United also has to play them.
Yeah.
Because they have been in a bad run of form themselves. They've lost the last 3 matches, Chelsea have. However, I think that players are just getting so angry, and there's that nice uptick of energy that they're like, okay, new manager's going to come in. It's toward the end of the season. We got to show someone something so that we can stay in the lineup going forward. So I think that will just be enough energy to give them something these last matches that they have to play. So I think Newcastle, again, bumps down to 5th. Liverpool just looking so good. They've won the last 5 that they've played. So I really think that they're going to end the season strong, and that the games that they have to play are not too bad. Aston Villa maybe, but I really think that it's going to shake out as Liverpool crazy up to 3, then Man United sneaking in that 4th place, and Newcastle, they fall out.
I mean, it is an interesting one, and I would say Liverpool are going to win their remaining 2 fixtures, so it's literally on Man United, and Newcastle here. So we shall see. Personally, I think it depends after the end of the Bournemouth game. I think if we win the Bournemouth game, they're coming up, then I see the next 2 games us maybe dropping one, but at least winning one of them. That's what we can probably see. But that Bournemouth game will be the interesting one. I still think maybe it's a draw, but I'd hate to be proven correct. I really would be like that. I'd hate to. I'd love to be proven wrong. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Well, I know my prediction's a little wild, so we'll have to see how it plays out. But at least in the end, our predictions, Manchester United is in the top 4, so that's always a good day. Let's look down to the very bottom of the table. As we scroll down, notice Chelsea in 11th. I still find that very funny. Now, as it currently stands, the very bottom in 20th, we have Southampton. They're on 24 points. And then above them is Leicester City. They're on 30, so quite the gap there. But right above them, Leeds, 31. Then just above the relegation zone, Everton with 32, so just a 1-point difference there. Then we have Nottingham Forest at 34. What are your shouts, and how do you think it'll play out based on the predictions you made when we did our in-person show in London? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I did say Nottingham Forest.
Me too. Right.
And they have some interesting fixtures. They've got Arsenal and Crystal Palace. Right? So that says a lot. I don't think Arsenal are going to lose that game. So already you can see they're down to perhaps the Crystal Palace game as a must-win for them. And is there a draw written on that one? Is there a win on that one? That's a really big question mark. Everton, interesting one. They've got Wolves and Bournemouth in here. So I think they can nick a win at Wolves. I think that's a possibility. And the Bournemouth game, that's a possibility as well. I think there's definitely points in that game as well. So I think Everton potentially are, I would argue, probably, fairly good to that perspective. Leeds, on the other hand, you've got West Ham and Spurs. So I would probably argue that's probably bad times, and I'm probably going to predict Leeds is probably not going to make it out. Leicester City, again, you've got Newcastle and West Ham. That again is probably a sign in itself, and some of those games. So you're looking at the fixture running list there as well. You're looking at perhaps Leicester is probably gone, and maybe Leeds are probably gone. Maybe as potentially Nottingham Forest as I think if I'm going to be, I think Leicester City are probably gone, which makes me sad because obviously they're Premier League winning days. And I think it's a toss-up between Leeds and Nottingham Forest. And I would probably say maybe Leeds take it and Forest go down.
I am hesitant on this suggestion. So I like Leeds because they have a lot of United States players, which I'm always a fan of, and seeing some U.S. men's national team players being abroad anywhere, especially in the Premier League, is awesome. So I would love to see Leeds stay up. I think I'm going to let that bias creep into my brain a little bit when I make this prediction. Southampton, gone. Okay, so we already got that done. So they're going to be at the very bottom.
Which is a shame, by the way. Yeah, a real shame.
It's sad, sad to see. I mean, ultimately, it's sad to see any team get relegated. I am a fan, though, of seeing teams that have been recently promoted end up staying. So that's cool. Like Nottingham Forest, if they're able to stay, I like that a lot.
Brentford doing well.
They've been slapping, which is awesome to see. Yeah. So always a fan of that. But then I think that Leicester City will also be one of the teams that stay in the relegation zone. They just haven't shown a lot, even though they did get a win in their last match. I don't know if that will be enough to carry them through the remaining fixtures to end up getting out of the relegation zone. I will make my full prediction now. So then Leicester City stays at 19, and then I'm going to have Everton drop down into that 18th
Ooh.
spot. So Leeds moving up to 17, staying clear of the relegation zone, also meaning Nottingham Forest also is safe. But if we have to look at Everton's remaining fixtures, like you had already mentioned, they
Yeah.
have Wolves and Bournemouth. I don't know if they're going to be able to get past Wolves or Bournemouth. Wolves have been like a wishy-washy team this year, so they've had some really good stretches and some not so good ones, but I do think that they're a strong enough team where they'll end the season by knocking them out. And just for perspective, Wolves sit in 13th, and they've lost a game, won a game, lost a game, won a game, lost a game. So it's just back and forth. So if we're following that logic, the next game is a win. So that means that's a loss for Everton, and that's where I'm going to stand.
Interesting. I mean, that makes total sense. I think, as you mentioned, Wolves with Lopetegui, it's been really up and down. But I think with Leeds, there's just something about their current performances just really have not been great. I mean, they were really lucky to get that draw against Newcastle. And I would say it's really unlucky for Newcastle. It's just been it was a deflected goal. Like it was, and their performance wasn't great that game. So, yeah, it's a fair point. But yeah, my prediction is I'm going to say we're going to go Nottingham Forest, and unfortunately Leicester City are probably gone. Leeds maybe potentially, but I'm saying Leicester City are done, and also perhaps Forest or Leeds. Everton make it.
So the way that this is going to happen, it's going to come down to decision day, and Leeds are going to break through the relegation zone by beating Tottenham. That's going to
I mean,
that's going
I'd
to be
love to see it.
the point.
I'd love to
Yep.
see it. That'd be great, and that's probably the most possible outcome. The way Spurs are playing, right?
So bad.
So
It's not even fun to watch them. It's just so sad to see. So hopefully next season they figure some stuff out and they'll end up being better. But just again to mention Tottenham not playing super well. The last 5 games they've had 3 losses, 1 draw, and 1 win. Not great. So Leeds, the door is open. Make my predictions look good for me. That'd be great. And stay in the Premier League and keep my U.S. men's national team's players in the Premier League. That'd be great. Much appreciated.
yeah, of course. I mean, that'd be good for them to get some regular football, right? So that'd be nice.
Yeah, I would agree. That would be lovely because we need more of it because obviously we didn't do too
Yeah,
hot in the World Cup.
exactly.
So.
Yeah. It's good fun.
Hey, all I know is that we drew England, so bye.
That is a very tough game as well for us. That was a
Yeah.
really tough game for us.
Looks like maybe the U.S. should have won that game too. A little scary. Now let's keep talking Premier League action. Let's talk about Ivan Toney because he has officially been suspended for 8 months by the FA for 262 breaches of those rules and all related to betting. So do you want to talk to us about that,
Yeah, of
please?
course. Yeah, of course. So obviously, as you all know, and we all know it as well, betting is banned. Now that is banned from as a footballer, you cannot bet on the outcome of games. You can't bet on, for example, other teams around. You can't bet on transfers, for example, either. So it is very much completely off limits. As a footballer, betting that's not. You can't even touch that with basketball at all. But unfortunately, Ivan Toney, 262 accounts, which is, as we were discussing earlier, it's crazy amount of that is a huge amount of breaches. But very briefly, it's really a case of a mixture, really, of potentially sort of telling some of your close friends, some of his close friends of potential transfers that were potentially going to take place or certain manager movements and getting his friends to almost like insider information or insider trading, as you would argue, is the way that would do it. Another breaches have also included potentially is asking friends to put on bets for him, which again is completely off limits and shouldn't be happening. And I think there's probably a few in there. I mean, it's very silly to do, but himself betting on the outcome of games, which isn't which is just outrageous to think that as a footballer you can just go and go, right, this team's going to win. And you, of all footballers, like people's form. You might purposely as well, from a football perspective, from a neutral perspective, you potentially have put down £20, for example, on Newcastle, beating Brentford, and maybe you're Ivan Toney and you're 1-on-1 with the keeper, and it's 1-0 at the moment in the 85th minute. Do you take it? You could be going home with a good amount. So it really brings, I would argue, not necessarily the full game, but perhaps Ivan Toney's game in disrepute quite a bit. So yeah, that is the top line of it, and it's not good. It's not good to see, and that's also what has led to, not necessarily that, but also it's something that's come into to process as well at the moment with the Premier League, is their voluntary will be no longer sponsorships from betting clubs in the Premier League going forward for the 2024 or 2025 season, 2024 season, next season, I think, actually. So that'd be an interesting one, because obviously, ironically, you've got Brentford, Ivan Toney, sponsored by Hollywood Bets. So it's a little bit ironic, but it's huge money, right? If you look at West Ham, for example, they've got Betway. So these are, incredible big betting companies which are backing, are in the world of football and sponsoring these football teams. So it'll be an interesting one kind of going forward. But Andrew, what do you think about this? I mean, it's 8 months here and it begins immediately. So a chunk of that is just summer, right? Is he just going to be on the beach? What are you thinking?
I mean, it looks like that's going to have to be the case because he can't train with the team. If you can't train with the team, you're probably not going to be in the facility or around it, I wouldn't think, because then that's too much of a gray line. And if you've already been banned for 8 months, you don't want to be banned anymore. So he should probably play it pretty straight, just get his own training fitness guy, I would think, and then just try to work out on your own. I mean, it's super sad and kind of a bummer because you never want that to happen. I know you mentioned the Premier League now not going to involve themselves with betting sponsors. Send them Della Rising's way. We will take them because sports betting has just become legal in a bunch of states, and Ohio is one of them. So we're getting tons of ads all the time for betting and gambling and sports and all that kind of stuff. So we will accept you. Please come join us. We have a pretty cool kit. You can be on the front of it if you would like. When it comes to Ivan Toney, I got quite lucky and didn't know when the FA was going to release the suspension and what it was going to be, because they've been investigating and talking about this for quite a while. And I ended up releasing Ivan Toney from my fantasy team 2 days ago. So I just kind of got lucky to release him before the news broke, and nothing on him. He's been a great striker for me all along. I just redid the squad just to try to catch up to the guy that was in first place, because I'm sitting at second, but he's 100 points above me. So it's pretty rough. But when specifically talking about this, I have mixed emotions, because I think that sports betting, when done appropriately, can be fun and exciting. Now, once you're talking specifically about a player in the sport, I do think that they should be able to do some type of sports betting, but I don't think it should be anything that they're attached to. So if you're betting on yourself and games that you are in, that's just stupid. Obviously, you're going to get in trouble for that. So you should have been a little bit more sly, Ivan, if you're trying to get into the sports betting world. I do think it would be okay for players, and I don't know what the rules are specifically on this. I'd have to dive into it a bit more. But if you're betting on other leagues and other teams in other spaces, I think that would be cool, because it could be something fun that you do with friends. And I don't know how detailed you get. Are you able to do a fantasy tournament for the Premier League if you're a Premier League player? Is that considered that? Does it become a negative thing if you are associating money with it? What if there's a pot of money that everybody pitches in at the end? Is that considered gambling? So I don't know what the lines are specifically. I think it should be probably better defined, and it shouldn't take the FA this long to figure out what is happening. Maybe the FA had it figured out of saying, we'll just wait till the end of the season so that Ivan can get most of his games in. That's something that would happen in the US. Leagues would wait to fine somebody for something or suspend them if there's something that will help make the league better or get more viewers or something like that. So I don't know how that falls in this type of situation or not, but I think that it is sad for Ivan. He's had an amazing season. I think really the worst part is that he won't be able to participate in England call-ups either. And I know he was super stoked to be on the England roster, and certainly in the form of his life, so would have probably made a difference for England. Disappointing to see that. However, the rules are rules. They're pretty straightforward. At least the betting that he was doing was pretty straightforward. You know that's wrong, so do the crime, you do the time.
Do you want a interesting story from 2017 about betting in the game?
I would love to hear that. Yes.
So this is also for American fans. I think our UK audience would probably have heard of this, but it's an FA Cup game. It's 2017, right? You got Sutton United versus Arsenal here, right? Sutton United, lower league club at the moment, well, at the time, and still are, and obviously we know Arsenal are as well. So FA Cup game, and they have a goalkeeper, and there was 8-1 odds on the goalkeeper munching a pie on the sidelines. That was the 8-1 actual physical bet that was put on, right? You could actually take bets, and that was one of them, 8-1 on the Sutton United goalkeeper, like the reserve keeper, eating and munching a pie. And what are the chances he did in fact munch a pie on the sidelines? Obviously got caught, and the FA came down on him as well, and he ended up losing his job. So okay, betting may pay, but does not pay in the actual eyes of the game. So, we're all losers here. So yeah, it's not fun. It's a funny story. I mean, who would have thought it? But yeah, that's one.
But like, yeah, how dumb do you have to be to know that betting is illegal as a sports athlete and then bet on yourself? I think it's just so dumb. But if I was taking that bet, and as a fan, I would bring like a bunch of pies and like be right by and be like, "Hey, just try this pie." I think
taste it, take
cool.
a bite, potentially take a bite.
Yeah.
Interesting, but obviously, guys, if you are listening, make sure you gamble safely. Just make sure you keep an eye on that because it can get quite addictive. So just watch yourselves.
And for the athletes out there, you don't want to end up like Pete Rose and being banned from the entire sport of baseball for the rest of your life for betting on your own team. So he was a manager back in the day for, I think it was the Cincinnati Reds, and he ended up getting banned for life.
Well.
Making sports bet on his own team. So now, there you go. Gamble responsibly. The one story that I want to talk about really quickly is happening in the MLS. So we have some actual soccer news to bring you on this
soccer
podcast.
News.
Yes. I am not the biggest fan of U.S. soccer and the system that we have in our country. It is a closed system. I am a hardcore 1,000% advocate for an open system, similar to what is happening in England, where you have the structure of their lower division teams, and if they continue to win, they can move up the pyramid and end up making it to the top league in the U.S. Now, technically, if you're looking at it from a pyramid structure, which we don't really have in the U.S., the MLS is at the top. So Major League Soccer is probably the most competitive. It has the most money. So that's kind of why they've claimed that spot. And that's where the top players end up playing for the most part when you're looking at the U.S. structure. Now, there are other teams, there are other leagues filtered throughout the U.S., not just in Major League Soccer. There are actually quite a lot of leagues. And there's actually a league that Delaware Rising plays in. So that's a club that I started. We're a lower league team. We're like toward the bottom of the pyramid. And there are a lot of teams in the middle. So from Delaware Rising all the way out to the Columbus Crew, there are a lot of other teams and leagues in between. And the USL is one of those leagues. So I'm telling you all of this to paint the picture for the big thing that is happening. MLS announced that they are creating or offering a space for a new team in Major League Soccer. So if you are an English listener and you are familiar with the English sport and how it works, it gets a little bit confusing in the MLS and in US soccer, which I don't even fully understand either because it's all about money in our country. It's very disappointing because to become a new member of a league, if you're a team that wants to join Major League Soccer, you just got to pay a bunch of money. Then you're in the league. It's not based on merit, competitiveness, anything like that. And MLS then decides if another team gets to join. So they've just decided that San Diego will be the next MLS city. So a team will be developed there. A sidebar for this conversation, Faisal, can you guess how much money it costs to become a new MLS team? So you have to pay like an expansion fee to Major League Soccer. Guess what that fee would be?
A year, did you say? Yeah, every year, or just like a one-off fee?
I think it's just a one-off fee.
Is it a couple of million? Is it maybe like
a couple million. That would
Yeah.
be nice. It's actually $500 million. If you want to become an MLS franchise for the low fee of $500 million, you can join.
You can literally just pay. So that is why obviously a lot of huge like billionaires just come in and go, do you know what? I fancy like making an MLS team. Chuck £500 million at it, dollars at it, and then just start up a club.
Yep. Which is crazy though, because the 500 million doesn't go to the club, it goes to the league. So the MLS is getting 500 million. Imagine what you can do with 500 million if you want to create a team. And then you could put all that money into a team and then have that team develop, create a community around it, and then build it up to the pyramid. But we don't have the pyramid, so all that money just sticks in the league, and it's really frustrating and annoying. So, yeah, go ahead.
You have relegations, right?
No.
See, that is generally what I hate. You have to have some sort of jeopardy, surely.
Yeah, there's none. So that's how you move from league to league is you decide, oh, I think I want our team to be in a different league. Maybe we want to be in the MLS. Maybe there's this new league that's an upstart. We just have to pay an expansion fee. That's how you shift leagues. You just pay a bunch of millions of dollars so that you can be in a new league. Now, the story here that's interesting, not just that, oh, the MLS has a new club. Great. Huzzah. I don't care. The problem is that San Diego already has a USL team. So if you're thinking of it as a structure, if you say it is a pyramid in the US, you have MLS at the top, then the USL Championship would be below that. Then there's USL 1 and USL 2, I believe. Then there are other bunch of scattered leagues as well. So there's already a USL championship team in San Diego. San Diego Loyal, which is really cool. Landon Donovan is a part of it, US legend. And now MLS is just saying, yeah, screw you, San Diego Loyal. You're not going to have the option to join the MLS. We're just going to bring in this billionaire to invest in this club in the city, try to take your fans, and then build an MLS team there. Disappointing from my perspective, knowing what lower league soccer in the United States looks like and trying to fight for an open system with promotion relegation. It's so sad. It's disappointing. And I don't love what the MLS does, but soccer works how it's supposed to work and how it's structured in the United States. It's structured to work this way. It's disappointing, but it's never going to change until higher ups in U.S. soccer make the decision to change it.
That is honestly sounds absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy to think that it's purely fueled by money. If you think about it, what you'd argue, where is the passion in terms of, like I said, where is the jeopardy? Where are those dreams of being a player in the lower leagues? And where are your Jamie Vardys, for example, right? Like, where are those players that are perhaps in the lower leagues playing to have the chance to play in the Premier League, and a person can just, a billionaire can come in and just basically create a team. It is crazy. And a lot more genuinely needs to be done. I think then also with that, you'd see a different increase in quality in the US men's national team as well, because you definitely have players there who have played in like brutal, like lower leagues to come up through the top, for example, or playing in teams like the equivalent of the championship, for example, because some of those championship games are harder, right? When you're in that league where you're battling out to get into the Premier League, some of those, if you watch some of those games, there are incredibly hard games. Like there's no easy games in championship, right? So, it's not great, and definitely more needs to be done.
Yeah, it is quite disappointing to live in the United States and be such a hardcore football fan and just live in this structure 24/7, especially starting a club. Like, it's disgusting because the only way for Delo Rising to continue to move up, which is what we want to do, we want to get more competitive as we get more resources, as we grow the club, we want to compete at higher levels. The only way to do that is to save up a bunch of money and then pay that money to the league so that we can be a part of that league. But then that money goes to the league. It doesn't even go to other teams. We can't keep it for our team to develop cool things for our players, for the community. The money is all just funneled into the pockets of the league and league owners and league management. And I get that leagues need to have some money, but $500 million, are you kidding me? That's just ridiculous. The amount of things you can do with $500 million for U.S. soccer in general with the lower league would be so crazy awesome. Like, just give $1 million to like 500 different teams across the U.S. That would change the lives of those clubs.
Yeah, like what would happen to grassroots football, right? Like, if you're able to kind of do that and bring all that money in to play, like you'd see an incredible amount of talent coming in through. But if anyone does have a spare 500 million and has listened to the show, then Delaware Rising are genuinely are interested. So hit up Andrew.
That would be great. And even if it's just a mill, that would be
a cool
even
mill.
better.
Just a cool mill.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And what's even more beneficial, we are a nonprofit club as well. We've structured it this way on purpose because we're not trying to be a part of like the hierarchy of expensive clubs that are bought and sold and money's transferred hands. We're just a write-off if you want to donate. So love it.
See, this is one for sake for another episode, but that sounds insane as well. It'd be good to understand the workings of a club because that's even better. That's incredible. Very interesting, man.
Yeah, we'll have to have a chat about that at some point. I'm always happy to yell at Major League Soccer and the disgusting closed system that we have in the U.S.
Love that.
Do you have any other topics that you want to touch on, or should I stop yelling into my microphone and talk about my nutmeg of the week?
I say we've covered a lot. We've covered Premier League. We've done our predictions. So the next time, perhaps that we record, we're going to hopefully see an interesting end to the season. We've obviously looked at the Champions League, and potentially we'll be able to see who the winner of the Champions League is. So it's going to be interesting. We come to the business end of the year, and also unfortunately we've had Ivan Toney. So and also the MLS. So we've had two interesting notes and two perhaps notes that we've tried to sort of break down. So it's been an interesting one. But I'm interested in your Nutmegged of the week, man. Go for it.
All right, let's do this. This one is quite goofy, and I believe that it comes out of either Kentucky or Tennessee here in the United States. So we do have soccer, which is a wonderful sport, even though I was just yelling about how closed our system is. It is a sport in high schools, which I think is cool. So in high school, you're able to participate in soccer and kind of potentially move up to different levels of it. More commonly, you'll go to a college and then play soccer there, and then it gets kind of muddled after that. But I'm talking about high school soccer because something really dumb happened, and there was a match between two high schools. And again, I think this happened in either Kentucky or Tennessee. It happened in Appalachia. So that's kind of the region where the Appalachian Mountains are. There was a high school game that went on, and there was a fight that broke out in the stands where some dude charged this crowd of people, started shoving around, threw two people on a track, and then he almost threw some lady onto the track. So if you'll know kind of what maybe some of the Italian stadiums look like, you have a track that surrounds the field for doing different track and field events. Then there's usually like a fence and then stands above it. So he was like throwing these people off of the stands. Just absolutely crazy to have this happen at a high school game. You have got to be kidding me. You need to do so much better with your life. This was some 24-year-old dude causing all of this ruckus, again, at a high school game. Get your life together. Maybe go support some higher up club where you can find some passionate fans. For example, Millwall. Their fans are crazy. I'm not advocating for fighting at all at any level, but at a high school game, come on. That is my nutmeg of the week. Get a life, my dude.
Wow, I do really love that.
Yeah, just so goofy. And it's the same with like people that get so intense at youth soccer games and they start screaming at referees if the referee makes a bad call in their opinion. Like, come on, it's a youth game. Like, don't freak out like it's going to be the Super Bowl or something like that. Always disappointing seeing parents do that.
That's always the way, isn't it? I suppose they're just so passionate about the game, so it's always really interesting.
Yeah, I think it is that. It's like you're super passionate either about the game or your kid. And I get that, like, especially as a parent, and if you do love the game too, which like will be me when I have kids out there, I'm gonna be into it. I'm gonna be yelling, absolutely. But there are levels to that. When you know you're at a youth game, like on some crappy field with molehills and all that kind of stuff, and your kid is 8, like, come on. But once your kid starts getting into high school and then further on, okay, you can toss some stuff to the referees if you know what you're saying, but like, don't ever assault other fans in the crowd. Get away from me.
Not good.
Yeah, not ideal. Do you have a nutmeg for us so that, again, my microphone needs a break from all the yelling?
So I was thinking about what would be this week's one. And I watched quite interesting, I think it was an interesting documentary recently. And it's not necessarily a nutmeg, but it's an interesting one. It'll be interesting one for next season. So at the moment, in the championship, it is a playoff final. It's going to be taking place shortly in the next week or so. It's Coventry City FC and also Luton Town, which if you haven't looked into Luton Town and the club, just Google their stadium, and you'll see why it's going to be funny. It's not necessarily a Nutmegged, but it's quite funny. They have it's essentially a stadium built within essentially a street. It's very intimate, shall we say? It's very, it's probably what I think is proper old school grassroots football. And when you do Google it, can you just imagine Haaland walking those walls? And the likes of, say, for example, I don't know, some Kevin De Bruyne's or your Bruno Fernandes is just kind of walking through your wall. So I'm willing Luton on here. I would love to see Luton into the Premier League and win the Championship final and winning the Premier League, going into the Premier League, which would be fantastic. So less of a Nutmegged, but bit of a football funny per se. Just check out the stadium. It's unique, it's very intimate, and it's going to be an interesting place to play. I definitely would love to go and watch a game there. It's like there's like houses, there's a row of houses, and then you're like, I swear you could literally come out your house and there's like the entrance to the main stadium is like to you. Like it's a house built on a street. It's an interesting one, so worth checking out. So yeah, that'll be funny one for next season. Fingers crossed.
That will be cool. I am also a fan of that, so I'm hoping to see the same. And Pep Guardiola managing at that ground will be hilarious. I am certainly here for that. And that just makes it more fun. Especially, you get those kinds of stories because you have promotion relegation. And that makes it so much more fun, engaging, interesting for fans. All right, I'm going to stop talking about that before I start yelling again.
But that's the beauty of it, right? It's the beauty of the sport. And I think that's the best thing about it is that like you said, it kind of brings you back, as we pretty said about the MLS, right? Like literally any club, right? No matter how your finances are, you can get there if you play well and you beat the teams around you and you get invested in well, you're a well-run club, right? So the likes of potentially, the Luton Town potentially getting up there would be fantastic to see. So the beauty of the game. Still pretty funny though.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm here for it. Their stadium's dope. I'm ready to see it in the Premier League. Well, all right, fam. We are out. Thank you for joining us on this episode. We will see you very soon in the next episode. Hopefully, you're able to get on a pitch somewhere. But until then, just don't get nutmegged. But right before we do dip out, the next time that you hear Faisal's voice on this dear podcast, he will be a married man. Holy heavens. So Faisal, can you offer one word of advice to future married Faisal?
I would say never change. Keep living it. Just never change is what I'm going to say to married Faisal. Is keep loving United, keep loving football, no matter what the game is. Just keep working through it. It's going to be a fun old ride.
Beautiful advice for everyone to live by. Well, we will see you all in the next episode. Until then, don't get nutmegged. Gotta remember that.
Peace, guys. See you later.